Hello everyone, I'm here to talk about the round feature in PTC Creo. I have a rough model here done to demonstrate all the features that we can do with the round. The round feature is available under engineering in this ribbon. So as soon as you pick round, the first option is to pick surfaces under sets. To start with, you can just control and start picking up the edges, and that forms the rounds. You have three options to edit the value. One is directly on the screen, so if you want to change the radius from 5 to 10, that's one option. The other option is in this window here and at the top. So if you give 5, it creates the same 5 radius for all the three selected under the same set. If you want to add a new set, without pressing Ctrl, select the edge, and that forms the new set. Alternatively, you can create new set here and then select edges under that. So by control pressing, it forms all the edges under the same set. Let me delete these sets and talk about the round in detail. So in this set, currently we are under circular option, where the rounds are perfectly circular, the shape is tangent, and the radius is defined by the dimension that we are defining. We have another option of conic. It's basically to change the shape of the round to a hyperbolic or a parabolic shape. So this 0.5 is basically a circular position. If you change to 0.4, it shifts down. If you change to 0.8, it shifts up. So that's how we change. So the major difference between conic and C2 is the way the edges are transitioning back to this the surfaces. So with C2 continuous, you get a more smoother transition, and this is used primarily for surface design, surface modeling, where these transitions are very critical. D1 D2 conic and D1 D2 C2 is pretty much the same option to change the shape, but in addition we have an option to define the radius at each tangent points separately. For example, this is 7.5, this is 5. So if you don't want the shape to be hyperbolic, you can just give 0.5 and it forms a circular shape, but because of the variation in the radiuses, you see a particular shape for this radius here. It's the same thing with C2. So as I said, D1 D2 gives us the option. The C2 is just how the transition happens between the surfaces. Okay, let's get back to circular. The other way to define a radius is not just by giving this dimension. We have an option to give chordal distance. So it's basically from the two tangent points, what's this distance? So this distance can be defined at 5 or whatever, but this doesn't mean that the radius is 5. So the radius might be smaller than that. So if I just unselect the chordal, it gives us a radius which is actually 3.5. The radius of 5 would be something like this. So that's the chordal. Then the next thing is extensor. So it's the rolling ball. So if suppose this feature here, where we have a transition happening and there are some issues with formation of rounds, so instead of rolling ball, we can select normal to spine and it forms the feature. So this is used when we have complex shape for rounds, so that's when we use that. Then the other thing is extending surface. So for example, you have a feature something like this and you pick this edge and you want a radius of 15, for example. It doesn't form this radius because it's intersecting with another feature. So if we select extend surface, so it picks this surface as a stop and it extends that surface out. So that surface is extended upwards. So that's the purpose of extend surface. if suppose instead of the spherical thing you have a radial maybe defined at 10, so just to show you how the extend surface works in this scenario, so if I pick it further forward, what will happen is it's gonna follow the curve profile, as you can see. So it just extends whatever geometry is available in the way. That's the extend surface. The next thing is the through curve. So through curve is basically define the shape of the round. So for example, you want a round here and you have a curve drawn, and if you pick the curve, it basically forms a round along that curve. And one advantage is that this is dynamic, so if you change the path of the curve, the round will also change. Then the next option is full round. Full round is used when you have surface like this. So it's not just internal, external as well. You want to have a proper round between these two edges, but it's tough to get it exactly tangent, right? So that's when we use full round. So if you select these two surfaces and hit full round, it automatically forms a full round. So the radius is basically this distance divided by 2. That will be the radius. So the same full round can, another way to define that is, let's form a new set. You can pick this surface, pick this surface. It automatically picked full round, so it needs a driving surface. So it needs to know what's a driving surface. This is the driving surface. You click this, it forms that full round there. So that's pretty much all the features under the radius. Another important thing is regarding multiple radiuses. For example, you have this radius picked here and you want to define more radius, so you just right click and add radius. So by doing that, what you can do is you can define variable radiuses. So if you want a small radius here, you can do that. Not just 2, you can add multiple radiuses. So this one can be 15, and I need one more, which is maybe over here. You can just click this, drag it to the position that we want, and maybe this is 5. So that's with the multiple radius. The next point is regarding transitions. So we have, let's go back to this round. We have transition where these 3 edges come together to one point. So in order to define how the transition works, you need to go to this transition mode and pick the transition. So once you select the transition, there is a drop down of multiple options. The first option is intersect, so you want to intersect, so it will look like this. Otherwise you want a conical corner sphere, so basically you can change the value of that radius and it looks like this. So one advantage is that depending on how you want it, so if you go back to this transition, you can edit the length as well. You have option to modify this, so there are multiple options that we can edit all the 3 lengths, the radius. And round only is the first option that we saw, the default round only, where it's just a round. And patch is when you in this case you don't, it's required only if you have complex transitions happening and you want to patch up that point with some surfaces, so that's when you use patch. So depending on how your round works, there are multiple options for transition. You can just right click, select the transition, right click, and it gives you all the options here as well. So I think that's about it. So I have covered all the options that we have in round in Creo. Pieces is basically, if you pick multiple entities, it just gives you the pieces here. So that's the pieces. And the other option is regarding solid and surface. So generally with round, you want the geometry to be cut and the round to be formed, so that's when you pick solid. But if you pick surface, what happens is that it forms a surface geometry inside the solid. So if you click OK, and if I go to wireframe mode, so this is the surface that's created because that round was selected as surface. But if we go to solid, it basically cuts the solid and makes the solid round feature. So yeah, that's about it. So these are all the features that are available in round. Let me know if you have any other questions under the comments, and make sure to subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Bye bye.